When people think about survival, when they picture the enemy, they picture something out there. A crowd, a mob, a foreign threat, a government overreach, some external force coming for what they have. And yes, those threats are real. We don't dismiss them. But here's what the data from every documented crisis actually shows. The threat that kills most people first isn't out there. It's in here. It's inside the household, inside the group, inside the mind of the person who thought they were ready. The real enemy, the one responsible for more survival failures than any external threat, is internal. And today, we are going to name it. Every single version of it. Because you cannot defend against an enemy you refuse to identify. The first internal enemy is the most dangerous, because it feels exactly like a strength. Overconfidence. The person who has watched hundreds of survival videos, read dozens of books, assembled gear, built a stockpile, and now genuinely believes, that they are ready for whatever comes. They are not. And the gap between what they believe and what is true is exactly the size of the danger they are in. Research from military survival training programs consistently shows that trainees who enter with the highest confidence levels, those who believe they already know what to do, perform significantly worse than those who enter with humility and a genuine willingness to learn. Why? Because overconfidence closes the mind. When you believe you already know, you stop paying attention. You stop updating your plans. You stop practicing because practice feels unnecessary. You stop listening to feedback because you've already decided you're ready. And then the crisis arrives, and it doesn't match the version in your head. The real thing never does. The overconfident prepper fails not because they had the wrong gear, but because they were too confident in their plan to notice when reality was different from the plan. The antidote. Assume you are less prepared than you think you are. Not as self-punishment, as strategy. Run stress tests on your plan. Try to break it. Find the failures before the crisis does. The most dangerous words in preparedness are, "I've already got that covered." Internal enemy number 2, information addiction. This one is specific to the modern prepper, and it is becoming more prevalent every year. Information addiction is the state of consuming survival content, videos, podcasts, articles, forums, without ever converting that consumption into action. It feels productive. It feels like preparation. It is neither. The person suffering from information addiction has watched thousands of hours of survival content. They can tell you the pros and cons of every water filter on the market. They know the theory of every survival skill that exists. They have never actually used a water filter in the field. They have never actually started a fire in bad weather. They have never actually treated a wound under pressure. In a crisis, information is not a skill. Action is. And the hours spent consuming information are hours not spent building real capability. This doesn't mean stop learning. It means for every hour of survival content you consume, you must spend at least 1 hour doing something with your hands. Watch the video about fire starting. Then go outside and actually start a fire. Read about water purification. Then actually use your filter. Study first aid. Then take an actual course with your hands on a mannequin. Information without practice is not preparation. It is a very expensive form of procrastination. Internal enemy number 3 is one most people completely overlook until it's too late. Emotional dependencies. Every person has things, situations, substances, routines, relationships, that they depend on for emotional stability in normal life. Coffee in the morning, alcohol in the evening, social media, comfort food, streaming entertainment, the routine of a normal workday, the feeling of safety that comes from a functioning society. None of these things exist in a serious crisis. And when they disappear, all at once, without warning, the emotional withdrawal can be as debilitating as a physical injury. This is not a soft concern. This is documented behavioral science. In the aftermath of Hurricane Katrina, researchers documented that a significant percentage of the people who made poor decisions in the critical first 72 hours were not making those decisions because of the external crisis. They were making them because of the internal crisis, the collapse of their emotional routines and dependencies happening simultaneously. People who smoked became desperate for cigarettes when supplies ran out. People who drank became dangerously unstable when alcohol wasn't available. People who depended on medication, including mood-stabilizing medication, ran out within days. People who required constant social stimulation became psychologically destabilized by isolation. What to do? Audit your emotional dependencies right now, before a crisis forces you to. What do you need every day to feel functional? What happens to your mood and decision-making when you don't have it? And most importantly, which of those dependencies can you build resilience against, right now, in safe conditions, so that losing them in a crisis doesn't also lose you your ability to function? Internal enemy number 4, conflict avoidance. This one will surprise people, because conflict avoidance sounds like a virtue, and in normal life, it often is. But in a survival context, the inability to have difficult conversations, make hard calls, or enforce necessary boundaries is one of the most dangerous traits a group leader or group member can have. Here's what conflict avoidance looks like in a crisis. It looks like allowing a group member who is not contributing to continue not contributing, because confronting them feels too uncomfortable. It looks like failing to establish and enforce rationing rules, because bringing it up creates tension. It looks like accepting a bad decision from a louder group member, because arguing feels harder than compliance. It looks like failing to remove a genuinely dangerous person from the group, because the social cost feels too high. Every single one of these conflict avoidance behaviors has a direct survival cost. Groups that survive sustained crises are not groups where everyone agrees and no one argues. They are groups where difficult conversations happen early, before the stakes become fatal. The practice. Start having the difficult conversations now, with your family, with your group, about what happens if someone doesn't pull their weight, about what happens if resources run critically low, about who makes decisions when there is no consensus. Have those conversations when they are uncomfortable but safe, rather than waiting until they are uncomfortable and critical. Conflict avoidance in preparation leads to catastrophic conflict during crisis. Internal enemy number 5, tunnel vision. In a crisis, most people fixate on one threat, the obvious, visible, immediate threat, and become completely blind to everything else. The house is flooding, and they focus entirely on saving possessions and forget to gather medications. The power is out, and they focus entirely on food and forget that their phone has a full charge they could use to communicate. There's conflict in the street, and they focus entirely on that external threat and fail to notice that their group is fracturing internally. Tunnel vision is a biological response. The brain under stress narrows focus. It's a survival mechanism for immediate physical threats. But most modern crises are not simple, immediate physical threats. They are complex, multi-layered situations that require broad situational awareness. And the brain's narrowing response, designed to help you survive a predator attack, actively hurts you in a complex collapse scenario. How to counter tunnel vision? Build a habit of situational check-ins. Every hour, or at every decision point, ask yourself 3 questions. What am I focused on right now? What am I not focused on right now? What could be happening that I'm not seeing? This habit, practiced in normal life until it becomes automatic, becomes a powerful counter to tunnel vision under pressure. The threats you don't see are always more dangerous than the ones you do. We have touched on this in previous videos, but it deserves its own category as an internal enemy because it is so deeply embedded in the prepper identity that it resists correction. The lone wolf fantasy. The belief that the ideal survival scenario is one where you, skilled, prepared, self-sufficient, don't need anyone, don't depend on anyone, can handle everything yourself. It is a compelling fantasy, and it is wrong. Not morally wrong, tactically wrong. The lone wolf cannot sleep and stand watch simultaneously, cannot provide medical care for themselves when injured, cannot maintain morale in isolation for weeks, cannot trade skills they don't have, cannot project credibility or deter threats the way a visible group can. Every documented long-term survival scenario rewards groups over individuals, not because individuals aren't capable, but because the problems of sustained crisis are too large and too varied for any one person to solve alone. The lone wolf fantasy doesn't just make you weaker, It makes you actively resistant to building the community that would make you stronger. The reframe. Self-sufficiency is a valuable component of a strong group, not a replacement for one. The goal is not independence from community. The goal is to be the most capable and valuable member of the right community. That reframe changes everything about how you prepare. Let's step back and look at the pattern. Because these 6 internal enemies are not separate problems, they are a single system of failure, and they feed each other in predictable ways. Overconfidence prevents you from identifying your information addiction because you already believe you know enough. Information addiction prevents you from discovering your emotional dependencies because consuming content feels like doing something, so the uncomfortable audit never happens. Emotional dependencies make conflict avoidance worse because when you're emotionally destabilized, the last thing you want is confrontation. Conflict avoidance allows tunnel vision to go unchallenged because no one in the group is willing to say, "We are not seeing the full picture." And the lone wolf fantasy makes all of it worse because it removes the external check that a trusted group provides. One person who knows you well can see your overconfidence. One trusted group member can notice when you're in information addiction mode. A real group with real trust creates the environment where conflict avoidance becomes unnecessary because difficult conversations are already normalized. The solution to all 6 internal enemies is the same solution: radical honesty. With yourself and with the people you prepare with. Not the comfortable honesty of telling people what they want to hear. The difficult honesty of telling people what they need to hear, including yourself. Here is your self-audit. 6 questions, 1 for each internal enemy. Answer them honestly, not how you wish the answer was, how it actually is. Question 1. Overconfidence. When did you last try to break your own survival plan? When did you last run a drill that actually failed and learned from that failure? If you can't answer that question, overconfidence is present. Question 2. Information addiction. What is the ratio of survival content you consume to survival skills you have actually practiced with your hands in the last 30 days? If the ratio is more than 10 to 1, information addiction is present. Question 3. Emotional dependencies. What do you need every day to feel stable? And what happens to your decision-making when you don't have it? Have you ever voluntarily gone without it for 48 hours? If not, this dependency is untested and potentially dangerous. Question 4. Conflict avoidance. Are there conversations about your survival plan that you have been avoiding? Rules that need to be established but haven't been? Roles that need to be assigned but aren't? If yes, conflict avoidance is costing you preparation. Question 5. Tunnel vision. In your survival planning, what are you not planning for? What scenarios feel uncomfortable to think about so you think about them less? Those are your blind spots. Those are where tunnel vision is operating. Question 6. Lone wolf fantasy. If every piece of gear you own disappeared tomorrow, would you still have the people and relationships to survive? If the answer is uncertain or no, the lone wolf fantasy is more real than you think. The solution to all 6 internal enemies is not a product. It is not a piece of gear. It is not a skill set. It is a culture. The culture of your household and your group determines which internal enemies thrive and which ones get named, confronted, and eliminated. A culture that rewards honesty over comfort. A culture that celebrates failure as learning rather than hiding it as weakness. A culture where difficult conversations happen early and often rather than never. A culture where everyone's emotional state is visible and acknowledged rather than suppressed. A culture where the lone wolf fantasy is replaced by the pride of being the most valuable member of the right team. You build that culture the same way you build any other survival capability. Before you need it, deliberately, through practice and repetition. Family meetings where you honestly assess your preparation. Group drills where you intentionally fail and debrief. Difficult conversations that happen now, when they're uncomfortable but safe. That culture, more than any gear list or food stockpile, is what will determine who survives and who doesn't. The real enemy isn't who you think. It's not out there. It's in here. Overconfidence, information addiction, emotional dependencies, conflict avoidance, tunnel vision. The lone wolf fantasy. Name them, audit them, fix them. Because the crisis doesn't care which internal enemy you refuse to confront. It will find every single one of them and use them against you. Drop in the comments, which of these 6 internal enemies is the one you recognize most in yourself or your group? Be honest. Your answer is the beginning of the fix. Subscribe and hit the bell. The next video is the one I've been building toward, the complete internal preparation system that eliminates all 6 of these enemies one by one. Stay sharp, stay honest, stay prepared.